She looked me dead in the eye, on her wedding day, and seated me by the coat racks. Not a mistake. A message. You don't belong. And that's when I knew. I wasn't crashing her big day. I was reclaiming mine. Hi, I'm Rowan. And this is the story of how being humiliated by my own sister led me to throw a charity gala that would burn brighter than her wedding ever could. Have you ever been pushed so far by family that you stopped trying to fit in and finally chose yourself? Drop a comment and tell me, what was your moment? When did you realize enough was enough? Because this isn't just about revenge, it's about power, dignity. And what happens when the black sheep stops running? Let me take you back to where it all began. You gave Savannah the ballroom and gave me a chair next to the coat rack? That was the exact thought screaming in my mind the moment I saw where they'd put me. Not at the family table, not even inside the main hall. No, my name, Rowan Grady, was on a delicate little place card, perched on a rickety cocktail table in the hallway. The hallway, between the restrooms and the coat check. I could smell perfume and mothballs. The wedding was unfolding like a scene from a luxury magazine. Floral arches, crystal chandeliers, every inch of the Everwin Hotel gleaming with curated perfection. Savannah's dream, her empire, her world. And apparently, I wasn't in it. I stood there staring at my name in cursive gold, hoping someone, anyone, would run up apologizing for the mix-up. A flustered planner, a nervous intern. But no, just the wedding coordinator with her tight bun and tighter smile, chirping, "You're right here, Ms. Grady. Enjoy." She turned on her heel before I could respond. My pulse pounded. I gripped the place card like it was a blade. I scanned the room. There was Mom, Eleanor Grady, next to Savannah, fluffing her veil like she was fixing a porcelain doll. Savannah looked angelic, as always, glowing in white, smirking in my direction with eyes that knew exactly what they were doing. I walked across the polished floor, my heels echoing like gunshots. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice airy, almost amused. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Eleanor barely looked at me. "Darling, not now. We're very busy." "It'll just take a moment." She sighed, as if I were asking her to scrub the floors. I lowered my voice. "Why am I seated in the hallway?" She gave a half laugh. "We had to prioritize immediate family. I am immediate family." "Oh, Rowan," she whispered with a chuckle, "don't be so dramatic." Savannah stepped closer, her voice syrupy. "Did they mess up your seat?" "Wow, that's unfortunate." Her eyes sparkled. She wasn't even pretending. My breath tightened. I turned back to Mom. "You really think it's okay to seat me out there? Like some afterthought?" "Rowan," she said, her tone sharp now. "Please don't make a scene. Be grateful you're even here." That word. Grateful. It burned. Then came Dad. Charles Grady. "It's just seating, sweetheart," he said, without making eye contact. "Let's not ruin the mood." That was it. That was my value. A ghost in heels, a name on a card, an obligation dressed in navy blue. I turned away. The room spun with music and laughter and glasses clinking. None of it for me. I walked slowly past the guests, their chatter buzzing in my ears, until I reached the hallway table again. I stared at the card. My name. So elegant. So unwanted. Then I did something I'd never done before. I placed the card back on the silver tray and walked away. Down the marble corridor, past portraits of people who mattered, I pressed my back against the cold wall. My breath was tight. My hands trembled. Not from sadness. No, that had dried up years ago. From clarity. This wasn't an oversight. This was a message. You're not one of us. And for the first time in my life, I didn't argue. I listened. A flash of memory hit me. Me at age 25, standing in Mom's room, finding that small leather notebook. The one where she wrote everything about Savannah, her favorite colors, the names of her teachers, a list of gifts Savannah liked, her food allergies, her shoe size. There wasn't a single page about me. Not one. When I confronted her, she smiled. "You've always been so independent. I didn't need to worry about you." Translation: you were easy to forget. Back in the present, I heard the laughter from the ballroom rise again, sharp, bright, like glass breaking. Then, footsteps. I looked up. Camden Pierce, the groom, Savannah's fiancé. He stood by the bar, drink in hand but not drinking. His eyes found mine, and for a moment, just a sliver of time, they held something I didn't expect. Discomfort. He walked over. "Rowan," he said, calm, controlled, but not indifferent. "Camden," I replied evenly. He hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "That depends," I said. "Is this a wedding conversation or something real?" He didn't flinch. "When I'm not around, does Savannah talk about me differently?" I blinked. He was serious. I could have lied. Maybe I should have. But I remembered Savannah's smirk, the hallway seat, the damn notebook, the years of silence. "You should take a sip first," I told him. He obeyed, and I said it. "You don't know her as well as you think." His jaw set. I was afraid of that. Then came the second set of footsteps. Miranda Pierce, Camden's mother, a woman whose presence could silence a boardroom with one glance. She held her champagne like a weapon and offered me a look, curious, calculating. "Darling," she said to Camden, "I believe you should see this." She held out her phone. Camden's face shifted as he scrolled, from curiosity to anger to betrayal. "Odessa," he started, then corrected himself. "Savannah, she said all this?" Miranda simply replied, "She's been planning to own you since day one." There it was. The door had opened, and I wasn't on the outside anymore. I was the one holding the key. "You deserve better than being treated like background noise at your own sister's wedding." That's what Miranda Pierce said to me, just hours after I walked away from Savannah's perfect reception. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were cruel, because they weren't. They were honest. And after years of silence, honesty had become a kind of violence. We were sitting in a quiet corner of the Everwind Sky Lounge, 30 floors above the wedding chaos. The city stretched below us, glittering and unaware. Inside the ballroom, guests were still clinking glasses, pretending nothing was wrong. But up here, the air was thinner, colder, and infinitely clearer. I hadn't planned to talk to Miranda. I hadn't planned anything. I just walked, aimless, until I found myself in the lounge's dim warmth, staring at bottles I couldn't name and a skyline I didn't recognize anymore. Miranda found me. She didn't sit immediately. She stood beside the window, arms folded, eyes sharp. "I assume you've had a rough day," she said. I didn't answer. She gave a small, knowing smile. "That's all right. I didn't come for small talk." Then she slid a phone across the table. It was unlocked. Open to a thread of messages. Savannah's messages. To her stylist, her planner, even a private group chat with the label, "Vultures Only." I read in silence. Miranda didn't look away. She let me see everything. Savannah mocking Camden's family, calling them old money desperate to stay relevant. Referring to Camden as manageable and, most damning, texting, "Once I get the ring in the condo, he can whine all he wants." My hands shook, but I smiled. "I knew she was cold," I said. "Didn't know she was stupid." Miranda chuckled, finally sitting. "You're quick. That's promising." I looked up. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because I don't like being made a fool of. And I think you know exactly what Savannah is. You've known longer than anyone." There it was. The unspoken offer. Alliance. Camden arrived halfway through our silence. He looked dazed, one hand still holding a drink that hadn't moved. He glanced at Miranda, then at me. "I saw your name on the table chart," he said quietly. "Out in the hallway." "Nice, right?" I replied. "Near the fire extinguisher." He didn't laugh. "I didn't know." I nodded. "Of course you didn't." He hesitated. "Has Savannah ever talked about me? Like, really talked?" I paused. For years, I had stayed quiet to protect people, to avoid drama, to keep the peace, but peace had never protected me. "Yes," I said. "She called you a project, said she was training you to be what she needs." He froze. I didn't pity him. "She said your money came with baggage, but your guilt made you useful. Have you ever discovered the people who should have loved you saw you only as useful? When someone reduces you to a pawn, it doesn't just hurt. It rewrites every memory you once believed was safe. If you've ever had to confront that kind of betrayal, comment number 7 below. Now, let's see what I do with that truth." Camden blinked hard. His jaw tightened. "Jesus," he whispered. Then Miranda leaned in, placing her hand gently over his. "You don't have to marry her, darling. You don't have to save her. She's not drowning. She's drilling holes in your boat." That's when he asked, "What do we do?" Miranda smiled like a woman who had played this game before. "We don't start with destruction," she said. "We start with visibility." She turned to me. "You said she never saw you, right? Let's make her look." Something shifted in me. Something final. A kind of permission I didn't know I needed. I glanced out the window. 30 floors below, the city buzzed. Horns, lights, laughter. A life I hadn't let myself consider until now. "You really think I can do something?" I asked. Miranda poured a glass of white wine, handed it to me. "I don't think," she said. "I know." Before we left the lounge, she handed me an envelope. Inside, documents, contracts, receipts, a folder labeled Pierce Grady Holdings, Pre-Wedding Negotiations. She looked me in the eye. "When you're ready to go loud, you'll know where to find me." Later that night, as I walked back to my apartment, something strange happened. The doorman, who usually barely looked up, said, "Evening, Miss Grady." Looking sharp tonight. It caught me off guard. I looked down at myself. Same navy dress, same heels, nothing special. Except, maybe I finally stood like I belonged in it. In the elevator, a little girl clutched her mom's hand and asked, "Mommy, why did the pretty lady look sad at the wedding?" Her mother smiled awkwardly and hurried her inside. And me? I smiled for the first time all night. People always think the first crack is loud, like glass shattering or thunder rolling in. But when the crown starts to slip, it doesn't fall with noise. It tilts, just slightly, and suddenly everyone sees the truth they've been pretending not to. Savannah called it her welcome dinner. A charming little pre-wedding soiree in the backyard of the Pierce estate, complete with string lights, artisanal cocktails, and a string quartet hired to play reimagined Taylor Swift instrumentals. She wore white, of course, a custom gown with a neckline that whispered royalty and a smile rehearsed to perfection. But behind that smile was something brittle, something sharp. I saw it the moment I arrived. Miranda greeted me with a glass of wine and a nod that said, "Watch. Just watch." She didn't need to say anything else. The plan was already in motion. I walked through the crowd, smiles and air kisses. "So glad you're here, Rowan," from people who hadn't said my name in years. Savannah saw me near the champagne tower. Her eyes narrowed just slightly, half a second of flicker. Then the smile returned. Bigger, tighter. "Didn't think you'd come?" she said. I sipped. "Didn't think I'd be invited." She didn't reply. The string quartet switched to something up-tempo. A photographer circled us like a hungry mosquito. Camden stood nearby, watching us. He looked calm. Too calm. Then Miranda clinked her glass gently and stepped forward to speak. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," she said, voice honey smooth, perfectly paced. "Family means everything. Trust, most of all." She paused, letting that last word hang in the air. "So let's toast to honesty," she continued, raising her glass, "especially behind closed doors." A subtle hum moved through the guests. Then it happened. The LED screen behind the dessert table, originally displaying a slideshow of childhood photos, glitched for a second. And then it switched. A screen full of text messages. Real ones. Savannah's messages. To her planner. "Camden's family still thinks I'm sweet. Idiots." To her friend. "After the ring in the registry, I'm done pretending." To her stylist. "Miranda just wants a pretty doll in the family portrait. Lucky her, I photograph well." Gasps. Real ones. Audible. A silence fell so fast it felt physical. Savannah turned, eyes wide. What? What is that?" No one answered. A child in the back asked his mom, "Why is the bride saying bad words?" The mom shushed him and pulled him away. Savannah marched toward the screen, her voice breaking. "This is fake. Someone hacked. This is insane." But the damage was done. One of the guests pulled out their phone. Another started whispering. Miranda stayed still, serene, her wine glass never wavering. Near the edge of the garden, a woman I hadn't seen in years held up her phone, not to film, but to take pictures. I recognized her, a journalist I went to college with. Her camera clicked once, twice. No panic, no rush. Just calm calculation. She met my eyes briefly, nodded, and disappeared into the shadows. I didn't need to ask what she was planning. The headline was probably already writing itself. Camden didn't say a word. Savannah grabbed the mic from the stand. "I don't know what this is, but it's not real," she said, breath shallow, cheeks flushed. "Whoever did this—" Her voice cracked. That's when Camden stepped forward. He took the mic from her, gently but firmly. He looked at the guests, then at his fiancée. "To those who wear masks," he said, "may the mirror never crack." Too late. And he walked away. Savannah stood alone, the mic trembling in her hands, her perfect crown slipping. I slipped away too, letting the murmurs grow behind me. As I rounded the corner of the house, I saw Camden and Miranda speaking alone beneath the trellis. His hands were in his pockets, head low. "You needed to see it," Miranda said, her voice quiet but unshaking. "But now you need to choose what kind of man you want to be." Camden nodded once. Then he walked off into the dark. Back at my car, I sat with the door still open and pulled out my phone. I wasn't filming. I wasn't posting. I turned the camera on myself, not to record, but to look. For the first time in a long time, I didn't look like someone fading into the background. I looked centered, certain, ready. Later, as guests began to scatter, the whispers turned to TikToks. One caption read, "Savannah Grady, bride or brat." Another video, zoomed in on Camden's face as he delivered that last line, had already hit 500,000 views by the time I checked again. And on my phone, a new message blinked from Miranda. "You said you wanted her seen?" It read. "Ready to make her unforgettable?" Attached was a PDF, an invitation, a black and gold digital flyer with my name in elegant print, the Rowan Grady Foundation Charity Gala, Chicago. Same day as the wedding. I looked at it for a long time, then I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like clarity. The morning of Savannah's wedding was unusually quiet. Not peaceful, just muted. The kind of silence before a controlled demolition, I stood in front of the hotel mirror, adjusting the simple black gown I'd chosen for tonight. No sequins, no shimmer. Just sharp lines and structure. The kind of dress that didn't beg for attention, but commanded it the moment someone looked too long. The kind Miranda would approve of. The gala wasn't meant to compete with the wedding. Not originally. But the moment Savannah made sure I was excluded from hers, I realized I didn't need to compete. I just had to be undeniable. Last night, when Miranda sent me the invitation design, black and gold, with my name in the header, I had stared at it for a long time. That moment was the true beginning of tonight. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. Downstairs, a private car waited. Miranda's team had handled everything: press coordination, security, guest list. All I had to do was show up and stand tall. As we approached Art House Gallery, I saw the line of guests stretching around the block. Photographers flanked the red carpet. News vans idled nearby. I caught a glimpse of a headline on one screen: 2 weddings, 1 city, 1 real star. Inside, the space was stunning. Clean marble floors, stark white walls, gold uplighting. Silent auction tables lined with designer items and donated artwork. And in the center, beneath a chandelier of blown glass, was the podium where I'd speak. Guests began to pour in. Some were familiar. Figures from the art scene, nonprofit directors, tech investors. Others were total strangers who just wanted to be part of something new, something rising. In a small lounge off to the side, a group of fashion journalists reviewed photos of Savannah's ceremony. One of them muttered, "Is that a row of empty seats behind the altar?" Another whispered, "She looks like she's crying in this one." The images spoke louder than they realized. Back at the Everwin Hotel, Savannah's wedding had begun. I knew that because one of the reporters at our gala got a push notification: "Breaking, Savannah Grady wedding begins amid PR scandal." I couldn't help but smile. At precisely 8 p.m., the lights dimmed. A soft hush swept over the crowd. A violinist played a short ascending line before fading into silence, and I stepped up to the mic. "Thank you for being here," I began, my voice even, calm. When this event was first conceived, it was meant to be small, quiet, intimate. But sometimes, when people try to shut you out, the universe hands you a louder microphone. A ripple of applause. This foundation is about visibility, about rebuilding what was ignored, what was dismissed. I know what it feels like to be left out of your own family's story, and I know what it means to write your own chapter anyway. This time, the applause was louder. Cameras flashed. Someone shouted, "We love you, Rowan!" I smiled, not from vanity, but because I finally felt real. A few rows back, I saw a familiar face, an editor from Chicago Now. She was already typing on her phone. "Tomorrow's headline writes itself," she whispered to the person next to her. After my speech, I stepped down and joined Miranda by the silent auction table. "You did well," she said simply. "I didn't trip. That's a win." She laughed. "No, Rowan, you shifted the room. That's power." Meanwhile, on social media, the comparisons had already begun. Side-by-side images, Savannah in a traditional ballroom, surrounded by scattered chairs. Me in a gallery filled with laughter, art, and light. The captions wrote themselves: legacy versus leverage. Bride who? Meet the woman who owned the night. At one point, a guest leaned over and whispered, "Savannah's livestream cut out. Rumor is half the guests left." Another chimed in, "Did you see that TikTok? They're calling her the Ice Queen meltdown." I didn't react. I didn't need to. My phone buzzed. Camden, no message, just a photo. Savannah, alone at the sweetheart table, eyes red, makeup smudged, every seat around her empty. The caption said, "You win." But that wasn't what it felt like. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like walking into a room I'd been locked out of for years, and realizing I never needed the key. I moved to the courtyard for a breath of air. A violinist played something soft near the glass wall. A young woman with a camera approached. "Can I ask?" she said. "Why today? Why not another night?" I looked at her. Calm. Centered. "Because sometimes, you don't fight fire with fire," I said. "You flood the whole city with light." The girl nodded and walked away. Inside, the music swelled again. The lighting crew shifted the color scheme to gold and navy, the same palette Savannah had posted months ago for her wedding. I stood there, under the soft gold lights, finally at ease. Not because I had taken something from Savannah, but because I'd taken something back for myself. Have you ever stopped waiting for an apology and decided to write your own redemption? That moment when you stop begging to be included and start building your own space, it changes everything. If you've ever chosen yourself in the face of rejection, comment 9 below. Now, let's see what happens when the world starts paying attention. The ballroom was already full when I arrived. Not with joy, with tension. I didn't need to hear the music or see the flowers to know something was off. I could feel it in the way people shifted in their seats, in how the servers whispered behind trays of champagne. Savannah had chosen a cathedral theme: white roses, hanging crystals, gold-framed mirrors. A fantasy, curated down to the scent piped into the vents, but no amount of artificial fragrance could cover the rot beneath it all. I stayed near the back, unseen but not invisible. That was the trick now. Be quiet enough to blend in, but sharp enough to pierce. Camden stood at the altar, posture straight, but eyes unfocused. Miranda was in the front row, her expression unreadable, her phone screen dark in her lap. Eleanor sat beside her, lips tight, hands folded too perfectly in her lap, like she knew the storm was coming but still hoped the wind would spare her. The ceremony began. Music swelled. Guests rose. Savannah appeared at the top of the aisle in a gown that shimmered like a threat. She didn't look nervous. She looked victorious. I almost pitied her. As she walked, phones lifted, flashes popped. But one by one, I noticed something strange. People weren't smiling. They were recording. Yes. But their expressions were strained. Like they were watching something they weren't sure they should be a part of. Halfway down the aisle, Savannah glanced to the left, where Camden stood waiting. He wasn't smiling either. He reached into his inner jacket pocket. I knew that movement. He had told me the night before, during a quiet moment outside the gala, when everything had already begun to shift. If I go through with this, I become part of the lie. But if I end it, I need the world to see why. Savannah reached the altar. The pastor began the opening lines, but Camden raised a hand. Stop. A single word. But it sliced the room in half. Gasps. A cry. The pastor froze. Savannah turned to him, her face confused, then frightened. Camden pulled a folded stack of papers from his pocket. "My name is Camden Pierce," he said, his voice steady, "and I will not be marrying Savannah Grady today." The papers unfolded like wings. This is a legal inquiry filed by Savannah Grady 3 weeks ago with divorce attorney Mark Dunst. She planned to annul this marriage before it even happened, before I had access to my accounts, before the prenup was finalized. Murmurs turned into words, then shouts. Dozens of guests raised their phones, not out of shock, but to livestream. One guest whispered, "Check TikTok. Rowan's gala has more views than this wedding." Savannah stepped back. "That's a lie," she hissed. Miranda rose from her seat. "Number it's not." She held up her phone and pressed play. Savannah's voice, crystal clear, piped through the speakers. "Just need to get through the ceremony. Once I'm in, I can do whatever the hell I want." The room imploded. Someone dropped a champagne flute and didn't bother picking it up. Another guest stood up, looked at her husband, and simply shook her head. A journalist in the third row mouthed, "It's happening." Eleanor stood, horrified. "Savannah." But Savannah spun on her. "You told me this would be fine. You said keep it quiet, keep it classy." She stopped when she realized Eleanor wasn't defending her. Charles finally spoke, from 3 rows back. "This isn't who we raised." The irony made me want to laugh. Savannah's eyes locked onto me. "You," she said, stepping forward, the bouquet trembling in her hands. "You've been behind this the whole time. You planned this." I didn't flinch. "I just told the truth," I said. "You're the one who built the bomb. I just made sure people heard it when it went off." She raised her hand like she might throw something, but Miranda stepped between us. "Enough," she said. "You're not the victim here." Savannah's breath hitched. Camden walked past her. He didn't even glance her way. He placed the annulment papers on the gift table, turned to the guests and said, "Enjoy the cake. It's already paid for." Then he left. One by one, others followed. Some out of discomfort, some out of spite, some out of solidarity. As the doors slammed shut behind the 4th group of exiting guests, the lights flickered. A server dropped a tray. The illusion cracked. Within minutes, more than half the ballroom was empty. Savannah stood in the center of the marble floor, surrounded by gold chairs and dying roses. No music, no laughter, just silence. Eleanor didn't follow her. Neither did Charles. She looked like a statue someone had forgotten to finish. One of the younger bridesmaids quietly stepped out of formation and slipped away, heels clacking in the hollow air. Then, from the far end of the room, came a sharp burst of light. A camera flash. A paparazzo outside the glass doors catching the moment of Savannah alone under the altar chandelier. That photo would be on the front page by morning. I stepped outside into the cold. The sky was overcast. A light drizzle fell. I looked up and smiled. It didn't happen all at once. No implosion, no explosive meltdown. Savannah's downfall came in pieces. Headlines first, then silence. 3 days after the wedding that never was, her face disappeared from the Pierce family's press page. No apology, no explanation. Just a quiet purge. Miranda called it strategic erasure. I called it poetic. Meanwhile, the gala footage had gone viral. Clips of my speech spliced with Savannah's unraveling played on late-night talk shows. People didn't even realize we were sisters until the side-by-side started trending. The caption, "2 Grady daughters. One chose light." Camden didn't reach out right away. I didn't expect him to. I spent the next few days answering press questions, finalizing donations from the gala, and fielding interviews. But beneath the surface, something still tugged. Not guilt. Not even regret. Grief. Maybe. For what never was. Savannah didn't show her face. Not at the Pierce estate. Not on socials. Her last post was still a blurry sunset from 2 weeks ago, captioned, "Soon." It aged poorly, and then the message came. Not from her, from Eleanor. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond immediately. But curiosity is a powerful thing. We met at a quiet bistro downtown, the kind of place meant for affairs and apologies. Eleanor arrived precisely on time, wearing gray. No makeup. Just shadows beneath her eyes and the weight of too many choices. "I thought you hated me," I said as she sat. She smiled without warmth. "I did. But I miscalculated." A pause, then. "She blames you, you know." "Of course she does. She says you ruined everything." "She said that long before I actually did." Eleanor let out a long breath. "You weren't supposed to matter. Not really. Not beyond optics. You were background." "I know," I said. "And that's why I stopped playing nice." She looked down at her tea. She'll recover. Probably reinvent herself. She always does. But the brand? It's tarnished now. Miranda's already shifting the narrative. I didn't respond. You should be careful, Eleanor added. There's still power in her hands. I know that too. When we parted, I didn't look back. Later that week, Camden called. His voice was quieter than I remembered. I don't know who I was marrying, he admitted. You do now. A pause. I should have listened to you sooner. I didn't say anything. You saw it yourself. He exhaled. I want to do something real. Something good. I don't want this to be the only thing people remember. You're not the only one. We met at the Foundation's new office. Nothing flashy. Just one long conference table and a stack of grant proposals. He brought coffee. I brought resolve. For once, we weren't the supporting characters in someone else's production. 2 days later, I received a letter. From Savannah. The handwriting was still flawless. You win. That was all it said. No signature, no return address, just those 2 words. I didn't smile, because this wasn't about winning. It was about finally choosing not to lose. Later that night, I visited the house I grew up in. Empty now. My parents had moved out, into some condo with a doorman and no past. The living room still smelled like old books and disappointment. I walked through slowly, each room echoing a version of myself I barely recognized. Then I saw it. The family photo wall. Half the frames were gone. Savannah's wedding picture space. Empty. But one photo remained. Me, age 17, holding a paintbrush. Laughing. I took it off the wall, and I didn't put it back. Outside, the wind picked up. A soft rustle through the trees. Somewhere far away, a storm was probably forming. But for now, everything was still. Everything was mine. After everything, I didn't need to stand over the ruins to declare victory. My peace spoke louder than any speech. No longer a shadow in someone else's story, I had become the protagonist of my own. What I've learned is this. Justice doesn't have to scream to be heard. When you find the courage to step out of silence, dignity and truth become your sharpest weapons. Those who live by manipulation will eventually face consequences, because no one outruns karma forever. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from a family, a relationship, or a role just to protect your peace? Drop a comment and tell me your story, because your voice might be the light someone else desperately needs. And if you've ever been pushed aside, made to feel invisible, or forced to watch someone else star in your own life, stay with me. There are more stories like this, and I'm going to tell them.